Hello, in this lesson, we are going to talk about finding midpoints, but on a grid. You can see on my GeoGebra screen, I've turned on the grid and the axes. Again, if you forgot how to do that, you can use the setting tools up at the right to show axis and show grid. In a previous lesson, we talked about finding the distance between any 2 points in either a horizontal or vertical fashion. And we're going to look at distances on the diagonal coming up in a future lesson. But for now, we're just going to talk about how to find the middle of those. It's fairly straightforward if the points are either horizontal or vertical. So if I have a point A right there, I have a point B right there, you can see that that's just a moving horizontally from the value of 2 over to 6. So you could just subtract or count the spaces yourself to see the distance from A over to B is going to be 4 units. If you want to use GeoGebra as a tool to figure that out, you can just right click on the segment, go to the settings, and you can have it show the label. So choose that, but show its value. And then when you have your drawing there, you can see that it stays at that value. That way, when you move your point, if you move this point over any distance, there it would still show you that distance. Notice if I change it to here, it shows that distance. And we're going to show how to find those distances in a future lesson, but let's go back to what we're really talking about is midpoints. If you want to find the midpoint of that on a grid, once you know that the distance is 4, of course, you just divide it in half and realize the distance for the midpoint would be 2 from either end. So you would have a midpoint there, a distance of 2 from either end. Let's take a look, though, if it's a little more complex. Let me go back and just go to my original drawing AB here. What if I had B sitting down here at another spot? What would be the midpoint now? Again, the lesson, in a future lesson, we'll find that distance. So you can eyeball it, and you can certainly use the construct tool, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the formula. If you just look at the values of these 2 points, the value of point A, if you were to turn on its label, let's give it its value, it's at the point 2 comma 4. If you likewise were to click on this secondary point and turn on its value, it's at 5 comma negative 2. So the midpoint would be the average between those 2 x values and those 2 y values. Let's take a look on the sketch pad for just a second. So 2 4 and 5 negative 2, writing those down, those being our 2 points, we can think of the midpoint as the average between these 2 x values and these 2 y values. In other words, what's the number that lives right between the x values of 2 and 5? Well, there's no whole number that lives between those two, but if you take 2 plus 5 and add them together, giving you 7, and then divide that by 2, you'll realize that we have 3.5 as the middle. So our midpoint would be at an x value of 3.5. You can do the same process for the y value. What would be the middle between 4 and negative 2? If you add 4 and negative 2 together, you get positive 2. You divide that by 2, you find that it's 1. It would be at 3.5 comma 1. Let's go back over to the GeoGebra screen for a second and just check that out to be true. All right, if we construct our midpoint tool, hit this line segment here. Notice it puts a point at C, and I don't have that turned on, but if I turn on its value, you can see that's to be true of 3.5 comma 1. This lets us know in general if we want to find a midpoint between any 2 points, we can just take the average of the x's and the average of the y values, that it would just be adding together and dividing by 2.